Hey, what's up guys? My name is John Silva and today we're gonna do some pen and pencil rendering. In front of me I got a character that I already sketched loosely so that we could save some time. And on the left side I'm gonna do a pencil render or pencil looking like render. And I'm on the right side, obviously I'm gonna do an ink render. I have a time-lapsed video and I'll just talk through the video as it keeps going. So let's get into it. First things first, I'm just gonna center the character here so we have a bit more space and focus just on the character. Now, I use this kind of brush that helps a little bit, that in the center it looks like it has a bunch of dots. But before we actually start the rendering, I set up my canvas to be like a mid-tonish with a little bit of color in it, just to give a bit more of a paper color feel. And as I was saying, this brush that I'm using, you can use any brush that you want, but I recommend you to use one that has a bunch of dots. When you make the brush big, it has just a bunch of dots or a bunch of texture in the middle, and make sure that it's a round brush. Now, like pencil, I will go most of the time with the small brush. I'll make the same brush smaller and render it that way. When I don't do that, when I actually make my brush bigger, imagine that you have what you call it, like a pencil powder. I honestly don't know the name. It's like a powdered charcoal that you can use for shading. It's actually quite cool. And I kind of try to mimic that. When my brush is small, it's as if it's a normal, I do exactly as if it was a normal traditional painting, pencil drawing. But when I actually make it bigger, I'm thinking of it as if it would be this charcoal powder that's very commonly used when doing pencil renderings like these. That's why I'm saying get a texture brush or make your own. We have a video on how to make your own brushes, and it's very easy to make. It's very easy to make. Another thing I should point out, if you notice, my color, the color of my pencil is not all the way to black, and this is very important because depending on which pencil type you're using, HB, etc., you know the drill. Depending on each one, the softness of it, the darker you can go, and that's very important. So in order to keep this realistic pencil rendering, I force myself to not being able to reach very dark values. We will get dark values later on, but for now, okay, so here on the left side I'm just showing the main value that I'm using. It's the lighter top one, and the darker value. I made those two swatches so that I can, in case I need to switch from one to another, I can just alt click it and we're good to go. Just basically demonstrating that those are the two colors I tend to use for this kind of pencil renderings. Again, if you notice, as I'm doing right now, I don't really care about the edge too much since we're on a new layer over the sketch. I just kind of pretend I have the powder and I throw it around, and then I can go in with the eraser and just erase that area, and it gives me that nice shaded effect going on. Honestly speaking, that's really the base of it. Everything else, it is a little different, obviously, because we're doing this digitally. The way you go about it on making, the brush strokes, or in this case the pencil strokes, it is very similar. It's just you have to make more of an effort. Unfortunately, uh, with the current technology, it's not so easy to mimic like that pencil kind of rendering without going the extra mile, or making sure that the spacing between each brush stroke is it's pretty good. When you have obviously a pencil, a real pencil, uh, when you do a stroke next to another, it blends in perfectly. That doesn't really happen, at least in Photoshop. So you have a little bit more work to do, a little bit more concerns and things you gotta watch out for. Right now I'm using a second brush. It's actually, it's a bit more chalky. I just want to make sure that I have a tiny little bit more texture. It's looking too soft. I like when the paper has a little bit of a heavier texture to it, and there's some cracks to it, there's some spacing in between the rendering. All right, okay, so the right side is the brush that I was just using right now. On the left side is actually a smudge brush. Now, as I was saying, it's harder to blend in Photoshop realistically with the pencil, making it look like it's, rendered like a pencil. So I made this fancy smudge brush that I just pass my smudge brush over, and you see those lines right there on the ear become fuzzy, but with a tiny little bit of texture. Think about it as if you'd use your finger, or what you call there's these like white tubes that you just pass over. They're made of paper, and you can kind of blend with them too. Think of it as that. I'm trying to put myself into the mentality that this real pencil, how would I go about it, and try to make it as as accurate to life as possible. Make sure you always keep the sketch layer. Make sure you don't merge it or something, in case you need to reference it when you're blending things, so you won't get lost. Just adding in some darker values. You'll see me erasing a lot of the lines with the smudge brush. Well, you're not really erasing, you're just blending them, and that's a really great way. Right now, I think I picked up some of the... Oh no, I'm erasing the... just like in real life, I'm just erasing the pencil away to create some light. I want to make this kind of semi-realistic type of rendering, like I would do with a pencil. And right now, I am making my brush really small and darker. If you notice the value right now, it's definitely darker. And this is so that I can achieve the form better. So I can go into those ambient occlusion shadows, those areas where light couldn't get there quite so well. I actually like this part where the whiskers. I thought it looked cool. I just pass in with the smudge brush and redraw a couple of them. It's actually quite simple, but it gives a dimension to it. It's quite satisfying. There we go. At this point, it's more of a cleaning up to do with the darker with a darker color. Same brush still. Yeah, all I'm doing is going to those really small corners, and the way I render still anyway, it's exactly the same way I would render in real life. Stroke after stroke, one stroke next to another. I don't do too many continuous lines where you'd have the pencil and then you just do like zigzags, you know? No, I do a line and then space, and then line, space, line, space, line, space, all the time like this, one next to another. You can see in the shadow, like under the character. That's all I do, but with a much smaller sized brush. Yeah, right now I'm trying to remove as many lines as possible, and you know, all of this helps if you're actually doing. Try to do it as much as you can in real life. You can transfer it. There's a couple of adjustments you got to do and things to figure out, but use this as a guideline. If you want to copy what I'm doing, that's fine too. We all learn that way, by copying everything. But try to learn from this, copy, do what you want, and then adjust it to the way you draw. Adjust it the way you do it in real life. Make your own brushes. That's why we don't give all the brushes I use. We don't give because we want to make you to actually make these brushes. Go through the trouble. Trust me, it's really helpful. It's really helpful. I'm making some more whiskers. At this point, it's more of yeah, detailing, cleaning up. The brush never really gets big. And starting to look all right. I believe a couple of points need a bit darker areas. Yeah, there you go. Now, of course, it helps if you draw like a fun character that you like, or if you don't want to make your own, just use any excuse you can to just practice this and keep at it. Also, this is a sped up version. I did spend like an hour or two, I believe, on this. It does take its sweet time, and it's worth it, honestly. So yeah, we're done with the pencil. We're gonna move on to the ink. So make our sketch layer much lighter. And honestly, the brush that I'm using right now is just your regular round brush. I just make sure that there's no opacity to it, meaning that even if I press slightly, the only thing that changes is the thickness. That's all. It doesn't get less opaque. You know, it's 100% opaque. Now, when doing ink lines, it can it can get quite frustrating because lines digitally don't come very natural at all, especially if you're using a tablet. I'm using a tablet, Intuos 5, Wacom Intuos 5, but you work at it, you have a more steady hand, and you can create things like this. One main thing that I keep in mind right now while I'm doing this is I don't want continuous lines. I really like those old type line arts where you'd maybe back then, if I would see the real drawings, for example, like from games where I would see the concept art and everything would be either inked or with the pencil. Maybe if I would actually see the real drawings in front of me, the lines wouldn't be broken. But because of the scanning, I guess, or maybe not, I'm just taking a wild guess here, but the scanning images, it had these lines that it looked really nice, like really nice textured lines, and there wouldn't have many it wouldn't have many continuous lines, always like these little breaks on and off. I really like that. I don't know why, I just really like that. And a good use actually of using continuous lines versus broken lines is if you mainly use broken lines like I'm doing here, you can use continuous lines to bring focus to something. Automatically that contrast, you know, most everything has broken line here and there versus one area where it has definitely continuous lines, automatically brings the eye into that one specific area. So you can use that little trick to make sure that people, you know, pay attention to that area. You really want them to mainly look around that area. Right now, yeah, I'm still building on from the sketch. The sketch itself wasn't too bad, but keep in mind that I'm trying to give thickness to my lines as well. They're not all one, you know, I'm trying to pretend I actually have a brush, like those pen brushes that you can go from thick to thin very quickly. I really like those type of pens, and the whiskers are always, they're always fun. Couple of details here and there. Truth be told, I have to keep reminding myself not to get into details when doing this type of, you know, ink drawings, because I just love doing details. I guess a lot of people do. So a lot of times I just have to stop myself. I start doing those little you know, lines and details, and I'm just like, nope, there's a whole drawing that needs to be done. You gotta stop. So these triangle shapes, even those triangle shapes, they're pretty continuous lines, but I still want to break them up. I still want to shake them a little bit. I don't want my lines to be perfect and you know, straight. I want them to feel organic. It feels like it has a lot more, to me, that it has a lot more soul. When I see you know, artists having those type of lines, it just gives me a sense of emotion, you know, when looking at a type of line art like that. But of course, if there's amazing artists who have the very tight, neat looking lines, it's like they make perfect curves without any jittering, you know. That's also very very impressive to me. But you know, I like to look at those more than actually doing it myself. And here we're cleaning up some shapes that I was following. Yeah, right now some shapes that I was following from the sketch are still there, and more often than not, if you notice, I'll use the eraser and kind of try to make some lines thinner by erasing it, and maybe, yeah, just make them thinner, and then going back in and make some areas thicker, just to break up and give some weight to some areas. I'm starting to think of adding occlusion shadows, so you'll see those like darker parts like around the hood. Right now I'm doing the coins, and yeah, adding some little bit of volume to those triangles. It's not a flat surface. There's a little bit of volume, a little bit of a bump in there, here and there. So I'm starting with the hatching. Well, right now it's not real hatching. It's just side by side strokes, trying to give a sense of texture. So this is since this is a rabbit, I tend to make my fur having a bunch of little tiny strokes to give texture, and so does the thing he's wearing at the top. So I have to keep a balance. What do I want the most texture? Yeah, he has fur, but I still want to distinct between the fur and what he's wearing. Yeah, right now I made a new layer and set the blue, because from this point on, you can stop here if you want and just add in flat color or start coloring, but I want to take it one step further. So I want to add a light source. And before I go in with the black, just pure black lines, I do it like I would do it in real life. Grab a blue pencil and draw in where I want my, the darkest parts to be. Once I'm satisfied with what I want, make that layer, the blue part, lighter, and I start filling in those areas that I just, it just streamlines the process a bit more. I still anyway try different angles of light here and there, but I tend to erase most of those. At one point I'm going to start hatching here and there, but before I do that, I tend to do this kind of blobby kind of brush strokes here and there where the shadow would be cast the most. So there's a little bit of hatching around the mouth and the nose. And you got to be really patient with this. When you do hatching, don't just... I'm actually trying to... It may not look like, but I'm actually trying to make a neat, or as neat as possible, hatching. I'm actually thinking what direction the brush strokes are going, and if they're following the form or not. That's extremely important. It may look like, maybe because of the fact that this is sped up, but it may look like I'm just like winging it, but no, I'm thinking about it. Every stroke that I do, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make a couple of strokes going this direction, and then a couple of strokes going the other direction. But at the same time, always thinking that it's following the form. It always has to me, it feels the best and looks the best when it follows the form. And it's actually a good practice. It's actually a good practice. This is not so simple. I definitely had a lot of fun, and I learn every time I do drawings like this, either with real inks or Photoshop. Always learning, always learning. So after, as you can see right now, after doing some brush strokes, I may add in some random brush strokes just to give a bit more of a texture, but still maintaining the direction, the general direction of the brush strokes. I'm filling in darkest spots. Now at this point I realize, like, I gotta really fill in some pure black areas if I want this to work out, because my lines are broken. Everything is starting to look, it was looking good with the lines by itself, but when I started shading, I'm like, it's a little too sketchy looking, even though I'm worrying about the direction of the brush strokes, I need to fill in some areas where there's solid black, or at least more amount of shading, so that the white empty spaces are more clear as well. And that's another thing that's very, it's very hard and it's time consuming, is empty space versus space that it's occupied by ink. You got to divide those two in a way that it looks natural, or natural enough, and it reads well. So when you look at the thing, you can distinct what is what, right? Here's a face, here's an eye, here's that, right? And that can be very, very challenging. Yeah, now here the hood, I have those shapes, and I'm just filling them in. And still, anyway, while I'm filling them in, notice I am anyways following the shape of, of the hat that he's wearing. Always following the shape. That's like number one rule when shading, like ink shading. When you're doing those brush strokes, the forms are going to read much better, in my opinion, when you follow the shape of the thing that you're rendering. Now, maybe you don't like cross hatching, maybe you don't like any type of hatching, and you just want to go for solid black shapes, like a graphical kind of look to it. Anyway, even that has to follow whatever shape you're drawing. Just not gonna have, you're not gonna have a bunch of lines. Just gonna have the silhouette of that shape guiding the viewer's eye and showing them that, oh, this much curved, and it's very challenging. Even if you're not an ink type of person, you should really try this, because decision making when using ink, or digitally, well, digitally there's no ink obviously, but like just the decision making is definitely a learning curve. Like you really got to do it a lot of times, and you'll get better at it. But at the same time, not only get better at the rendering and decision making, you'll also get better at lighting. To me, in this piece, I'm like, man, I gotta study more lighting, or man, I gotta fix this so much better, because it's just not working out. That's why I was working mostly on the bottom side. It wasn't really working out for me. Now it's looking better than before, but the decisions, man, they can get you. Now the ear was another tough part. I don't know how I was able to, in the end, pull it out. I guess I was just stubborn, and I just went for it. But I worked quite a bit on these ears, because of all the fur going in a few directions. Yeah, at this point, I don't think I really touched the face much. Maybe I should have, looking at it. But well, I was more focused with these tough little hurdles. Yeah, I'm zooming out so that I can see uh, the whole rendering at one glance. So if I'm far away from it, I can see everything at once, pretty much, and I can immediately tell what needs more work, what needs to be more pronounced, and also what needs to be erased. I'm noticing there's a lot of areas that need a bit more solid black to really shape that area. So it's really helpful to use the eraser. I mean, you can't use obviously you can't use an eraser when you're inking. You use a what you call like a white marker. I don't know what you call it in English, but you'd use this white kind of liquid to cover it up. Then you'd have to photocopy it so that the photocopy wouldn't, because on the paper, the paper, even though it's white, you still can see this liquid anyway. So usually people use, if you're doing traditional and you're finishing an inking that has that kind of liquid, but you don't want people to see it, you just photo the way you want it. And yeah, we're done with the inking, and I hope you learned some things. This was lots of fun, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.